So why are we even talking about workplace relationships? Why do they matter so much? So if you know any of our work at all, you know we keep harping on this. What makes people happy at work? Results, relationships, right? Doing great work together with great people. And I think a lot of people get this. A lot of people focus on these two, but I also think that a lot of workplaces over focus on results. This is natural. Like a business exists, any workplace exists to create results, and very often that is where the conversation begins and ends. How do we do better work? How do we do more work? How do we achieve even better goals, even higher profits? Yada yada yada. Um, and I think that's a mistake. I think relationships are essential for creating better results. And there's a challenge here. And this great article from the Harvard Business Review asks the question: what should we focus on? Results or people? Results or relationships? And the article makes the point that there is a ton of research from neuroscience that shows that there are two systems in the brain. One is responsible for goal-driven, analytical, results-oriented thinking, and the other system is responsible for relational thinking, right? For noticing how other people are doing and relating to other people, and that these two systems function kind of like a neural seesaw, they call it. So that when one system is active, the other system is suppressed, and vice versa. So it's really hard, almost impossible, to focus on both results and relationships at the same time. Our brains are wired for one or the other, but not both at the same time. And I think what happens is that in many, many workplaces, the results focus becomes so heavy on the seesaw that it's the only one that dominates, right? It's the only one that gets any real attention. It's the only one that's part of the conversation. And I think we need to avoid that. Also, there is an anti-relationship bias in many workplaces. If you ever heard sentences like, I'm not at work to make friends, or it's cold at the top, or it's a dog eat dog world, or, work is not about making friends, it's about getting ahead. That is how some people see work. They see work as like antithetical to good relationships, to friendships at work. And I think that's a mistake, but it's worth noticing that this bias is out there. Um, and I have a little thought experiment for you. Imagine that you are scheduled for surgery, right? And you get a choice of two teams. They're both very, very good. They're like excellent surgeons and nurses and anesthesiologists and everything. But you get a choice. You get team A, where everybody hates each other. Or maybe they don't hate each other, but they certainly don't have good relationship. They mistrust each other. They don't work well together. They don't really like each other. And then you get team B, where they're like that. There's a deep mutual respect. They like each other. They communicate well. Which of those two teams, would you rather get operated on by? Yeah. And you might think that's an obvious answer. And if you pick team B, the one that are actually, like each other, you're exactly right. And there's a ton of research on this. This is my favorite researcher on this whole topic is Jodie Hoffer-Cattell, and this is my favorite book of hers called The Southwest Airlines Way. And in this book, she analyzes all the major airlines in the U.S. So Southwest, Delta, American, and United. And she looks at how they've performed. And of course, Southwest has way outperformed the others. And she concludes that, and she has a ton of research on that their main advantage over the other clients is not that they have to fly the same planes, they have the same systems, they fly to the same airports. Southwest's main advantage is their relational coordination, she calls it, their ability to create good workplace relationships. And she has found in her research and in other research, we found that when we have good workplace relationships, these are the advantages we get. So we get more trust. When people like each other, they trust each other. If people don't like each other, if they don't have a good relationship, or if they don't know each other, they don't really trust each other. And of course, when people trust each other, they work better together. When people have good relationships, you get more helping behavior. If I know you and I like you, I want to help you. If I have no idea who you are, or if I actively dislike you, like you can do your own work. I'm not going to help you. You get better communication. People talk better, and there are fewer misunderstandings when we actually have a good relationship. Higher resilience. We know this from a ton of research that when people have good relationships with others around them, they are more resilient towards any stressors, any challenges in their work environment, and less stress. We know that good relationships at work cause less stress, and we know that bad relationships at work are very much associated with higher levels of stress and burnout. Higher discretionary effort. When people have good relationships in the workplace, they go above and beyond. They go the extra mile for the workplace, and less conflict. When people have bad relationships, like any little misunderstanding could turn into a major conflict that burns for years. But when people like and respect each other, they're like, you know what? I'm sure he didn't mean like that. I'll go ask him and figure out what he really meant. I'm sure it wasn't that bad. So these are just some of the benefits, and I'm pretty sure that you can see how much that would improve teamwork and coordination and performance in our workplaces just by having better relationships. Um, and going back to the experiment with the surgeons, with the operation, with the thought experiment there, um, Jodie Hoffer-Cattell has already also taken this research into hospitals and analyzed different hospitals. This is her book on that, high performance healthcare, and she has found that the same applies in hospitals, and specifically in hospitals. If you have good relations in the workplace, in the hospital, you get better patient outcomes. So you get less medical mistreatment, you get better patient outcomes, more patients get better faster, which I think is the ultimate goal for any hospital, right? So this proves, I think, that the benefits for the workplace are enormous, and good workplace relationships really do boost the bottom line. Of course, it's also great for the individual. And if you as a person have better relationships in the workplace, then you are going to be happy at work. You're going to be less stressed. You're going to have better health. Research, clear result there as well. Also, and I think this is very important. Bad relationships at work are associated with a huge number of healthcare problems. So, for instance, we know that if people are being bullied at work, this can lead to stress and depression. It can lead to heart disease, that kind of thing. A bad relationship with a boss has been shown to lead to, again, health problems, more heart attacks, worse sleep quality, and in one study from Switzerland, worse sex life. So we're talking real stakes here. Real stakes here. So I want to talk about how we boost these workplace relationships. And of course, we have many relationships in the workplace, right? These are just some of the types that you might think of others. So obviously between coworkers and teams, I mean, that's clear. You work in a team with other people. Those might be some of the most important relationships because those are the people you spend the most time with. And then, of course, between the manager and the employees in the team, super important relationship for both the employees, but also for the manager. We know that employees who have a bad relationship with their immediate manager tend to be way less happy at work and way more stressed and have more burnout. But we also know that from a huge Norwegian study, that managers who have a good relationship with their employees actually are also less stressed. So there's also a payoff there. Um, Relationships across teams, I think, are super interesting, because you have a relationship with everybody you come in contact with across the workplace. So if you're in this team and occasionally you work with that other team, you have a relationship with them. Um, there's a fun example from the Southwest Airlines book I just mentioned by Jodie Hoffer-Cattell, where she's interviewing this Southwest employee, and he wants to show her how good the relationships are at Southwest. And he points at another Southwest employee walking by, and he says, "You see that guy? I don't know him. I like him." That's how good the relationships are at Southwest Airlines. That I've never met that guy, but he's one of my coworkers. I assume he's great. Um, and then one really interesting form of relationships in the workplace that I don't think anybody really talks about is the parasocial relationship with upper management. Okay, what is a parasocial relationship? Have you ever met George Clooney? I haven't, but I have an idea of what George Clooney is like. I have an idea of his personality, his likes, his dislikes, how he would behave. I have an idea of, if he seems like a good guy to me. I have no idea, but he seems like a good guy to me, and I just assume that about him. So this is a very one-sided relationship. George Clooney does not have any idea that I exist, right? And in the literature, they call that a parasocial relationship. One that I have is one-sided relationship with somebody else, typically a celebrity. And in the workplace, every single employee is going to have a relationship with upper management, specifically with the CEO. The CEO may never have met them, does not know their name, have no idea they even exist. But as an employee, you will still have a relationship with them. You will have an idea of what that person is like. You will have an idea of whether or not that person can be trusted. If they say A, does that really mean B, or can you believe what they say? You'll have an idea, a sense of whether this is a good person that cares about other people, or somebody who's just in it for their own advancement. And this parasocial relationship is actually going to color your experience of what it's like to work in this workplace. It's going to, if you have a good parasocial relationship, a good sense of who this person is, that's going to make you happy at work. And if you have a feeling that this CEO is probably a real jerk and doesn't care about me and only about the stock price, you're probably going to have a worse experience at work. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. So these are the main types of relationship. Of course, there are relationships with clients. You can have deep and lasting relationships with clients if you're in a client-facing role. Vendors, you can have a relationship with vendors and suppliers, and everybody you come in contact with as a result of your work. But it's clear that the more time you spend with people, the more important those relationships are. So the relationships with your immediate manager and with the coworkers on your team probably going to be the most important. Or if you're the manager, the relationships with your employees. And what I've noticed is that when these employee relationships go bad, it's usually often because of one of these four factors. So constant busyness is a relationship killer. And that's actually so important that I talked about it in my last video. I'll link to that in the materials for this video. And we know that when people are very busy at work, they become way less focused on creating and maintaining relationships. Another problem is that if only the results are valued, and in many organizations that is the case. I want you to imagine a team of employees working well together, and there's employee A who gets excellent results, right? Employee A always overperforms their goals. They're so good at their job, they deliver every single time. And then there's employee B, who's just the kindest, nicest person to work with. Somebody who's always friendly, always in a good mood, remembers everybody else's birthdays and celebrates them, and creates a really good experience working in that team. In your opinion, in most workplaces, who is most likely of those two employees to get praised, to get recognition, to get celebrated, to get held up as an example? And of course, in by far the most workplaces, it's going to be the results-oriented person, the person who delivers results. Even though very often that person might only be able to deliver results because there is somebody created good relationships, right? Because of all the benefits that we saw that good workplace relationships create. So if you're in an organization and only the results-oriented people are ever celebrated or ever highlighted or ever valued or ever praised, that can help slowly kill relationships over time in that organization. Negative focus. There's us human beings have a natural tendency called negativity bias. It's just easier to focus on the negative in any given situation than on the positive. Our brain is always on the lookout for threats, for negative things that we need to be aware of. And that can happen in the workplace too. But the problem is that if that takes over in the workplace, and I've seen that happen in many, many workplaces, and we become excessively negatively focused, then it's very hard to build good relationships because you can't build strong, long-lasting, constructive relationships around something negative. You can build very powerful relationships about, hating that other team. They're all idiots, or about hating the boss, or, hating the work, or, the workplace, or hating the CEO. You can build very strong relationships around that, but they're not going to be very constructive. They're going to be very negative. So I really think that what we need to do here is create positive relationships where we connect and build relationships around something that we like, around something that's positive. For instance, the good work we do or the good relationship we create. And the final thing that can really kill relationships in the workplace is jerks, and especially jerks in management. If you have a team of 19 people who like each other and just one jerk, that person can ruin it for everybody else. They can create so much mistrust and negativity that it becomes impossible to create good relationships in that team. So you really need to watch out for that. These are some of the common relationship killers that I've seen in many workplaces. Maybe you've seen some others. Let me know in a comment. So how do we do it? How do we create better workplace relationships? I have 10 tips I want to give you. And these are all tips that I've seen work really, really well in various companies around the world. So these have been tested and found to work. And there's research behind each of these. I also want to talk a little bit about maybe what not to do. Because in a lot of workplaces where like, let's create, we need better relationships, the immediate thing that comes to people's minds is we need a party. Let's have like a company event and everybody can have some beers and get together and create better relationships. Let's have a Christmas party, for instance. And those are fine. There's nothing wrong with having a Christmas party or an office party or a summer party or whatever. But those parties are not every day. Like the Christmas party, once a year, summer party, once a year. So I really strongly believe that this is fine. But if we really need to, really want to create better workplace relationships, we need to focus on how do we do it every day as part of our everyday work, right? So it's not like every, twice a year, the summer party and the Christmas party, that's where we have relationships. No, it's in our meetings, in the way we work together, in our projects, in our communications, in our emails, in our phone calls, in our online meetings. That's where we build those relationships every single day. That's where the focus should be. So with that said, I want to give you 10 examples. And some of these are gonna be things that you can do yourself, and some of them are gonna be like more systemic that the organization can do. Um, here's one. This is gonna sound so simple, but say good morning. Um, and in a lot of workplaces, people don't like people just come in there. So basically, they rush to their workstation, they turn on the computer, and they immediately start like replying to their mountain of emails that kind of came in during the night. That's a mistake. You can actually build it. It's a super simple thing, but if you actually go around and say a friendly good morning to your coworkers in the morning, that actually helps build relationships, especially when the manager does it. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard from employees, my manager never acknowledges me. He just comes in, goes to his own office, shuts the door, and starts working. Yeah, I worked with a company in Denmark where this was kind of an unofficial rule. If you came into an office to talk to somebody and there were four people there, and it was still like the rule was kind of like before 10 a.m. Then you would go to around to every, all four people in the office, say good morning, good morning, good morning, and then you go to the guy you needed to talk to, and that created a really good atmosphere. Just like we acknowledge each other, we see each other, we're glad we're here. It's a stupid little thing, but it actually makes a difference as opposed to ignoring each other first thing in the office in the morning. Tip number two: breaks, lunch breaks, coffee breaks. Take those together. Don't make don't just go on Candy Crush or Facebook or TikTok or whatever and spend your break there. Breaks are a fantastic time to reconnect with your coworkers, find out what's going on with them. And I think some workplaces I work with have actually prioritized breaks. So, for instance, you can have like a lunch break schedule where you're paired up with other people in the office and you sit down a group of people and have lunch together. I think that's a fun idea. But the most important thing is that the workplace prioritizes these breaks, so there is actually time to go have an actual lunch break, and you just don't just eat a sandwich at your desk while you're still working. I don't think that's very. By the way, that's not good for your performance either. We need restitution. We need breaks, but also breaks are a great way to create and maintain our relationships. Talk about, so what did you do this weekend? What are you doing this weekend? Where do you go on vacation? That kind of thing. Tip number three: random acts of workplace kindness. This is where we do something nice for someone else in the workplace, just out of the blue. I want to show an example. This is from a Danish workplace where the two sales managers, Karsten and Carsten, Karsten is a very common name in Denmark, wanted to do something nice for their employees. So one Monday morning, they're in the reception and they greet everybody like this. They're like, "Good morning, welcome, how are you?" There's a little plate of breakfast they can take up to their desk. They're like, "Let's have a great week together." Um, and people had no idea this was coming. This was not announced in any way. It's a surprise when you see this guy's face right there. Yes. Um, and Carsten, they didn't tell anybody they were doing this. Just did it one Monday morning, and they said it took them about an hour. Go shopping for the breakfast, and then half an hour to do this. It cost them about like €100 maybe. And they told me that people were happy for a week after this. And these random acts of workplace kindness are fun because they show, I care. There's also the good morning element here is also nice. But I care about you. I want you to be happy. I want to do nice things for you. It's very relational when you do things like that, and anybody can do nice things for others in the workplace. Another tip. This is from a Czech tech company that I talked to, and they set up internal groups for people who had shared passions. So there was like an internal message board for Manchester United fans, an internal chat for people who play guitars, an internal chat for people who garden. And that's excellent because they had hundreds of employees. So this way you could find people who had shared passion. And when you have a shared passion, it's very easy to build relationships again around something positive, something you have in common, something you enjoy, not something you hate, not something you're against. That's how you build great relationships. Again, this cost no money to set up. They did that on their internal intranet they had anyway. So yeah, so super simple idea. Tip number 5 for creating positive relationships in the workplace is positive feedback. And positive feedback is super important because it first of all it's great for results because if you give me positive feedback, it means I did a good job. That's amazing. But what I've become increasingly aware of is that positive feedback also creates relationships because if you give me positive feedback, it means you see my positive qualities, you see my positive sides, and you care enough about me to actually tell me about it, which is really powerful for creating relationships. I have a whole video, I'll link to that in the video materials as well, on why it's so important to create a culture of positive feedback in the workplace. Um, and the more we can do this, the better. There is some fascinating research by a German researcher called Axel Honneth, who looks at what you call recognition theory. What happens to people when somebody sees their positive qualities, or what happens to people when nobody sees their positive qualities, or when people only see their negative qualities. And that can be devastating psychologically. Um, that's tip number 5, positive feedback. Tip number 6, have a no jerks policy. And there are many, many workplaces out there who have adopted this rule that they will never hire or tolerate jerks in the workplace. And I think that's absolutely brilliant because jerks will come in and ruin the relationships for everyone around them. I think the most famous example of a workplace that have this policy is the Australian tech company Atlassian, who have a fascinating culture in many, many ways. So never hire jerks, never tolerate jerks, especially jerks in management positions, because they can ruin it for everybody else, and really ruin every positive relationship in their teams in the organization. And of course, if you have a jerk at the top, they will hire more jerks. They will hire more jerks below them, and it's going to be all jerks all of a sudden. Not nice. Um, that's tip number 6. Tip number 7 is for the top leadership to meet with employees. I spoke at a conference in Istanbul, a big HR conference some years ago, and there was an HR manager there who said that every month his secretary set up a lunch with 10 random employees from across the company. Yeah. So he would sit down with them and they'd have a long lunch, like 2 hours. And he was just there to listen. He just wanted to hear what was going on in the organization and let them ask any questions. Right. And this is brilliant because that way they get to know him. They can figure out, they can ask any questions, address any doubts, come up with any complaints they have in the workplace, and he can hear what's really going on and build a relationship with these people. Now, he worked in an organization with thousands of people, so he's not going to get around to everyone. But now these people have met him and they will tell their coworkers, so here's what this person is really like. And that will help more people have a positive parasocial relationship with one of the top people in top leadership in the organization, and will build their trust towards the whole organization. Um, Another great example I've seen of this was a tech company in Denmark that was hiring like crazy. So they brought in like dozens of new employees every single month. And every month, the CEO of the organization would have a get together for all new employees. Everybody who started that month would come to this person's home and get the whole story of like, how was this company founded? What's our values? What do we care about? What's important to me? That kind of thing. And that, again, great for building that parasocial relationship. Again, that CEO is not going to remember every single one of these new hires, but every single one of the these new hires now has an idea of who is the CEO, has a positive image of them, what they care about, what's important to them, builds trust in them, and through them builds trust in the entire organization. My I have no data behind this, but my strong belief is that as an employee, I can't have a relationship with a company, with the organization, but I can have a relationship with the CEO or somebody in upper management, and that is a placeholder for my relationship to the organization. The quality of that relationship with somebody in upper management is going to be is basically going to be the same as my relationship with the entire organization. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I'll develop that thought a little more. Again, no research. This is my hunch. Um, Tip number 8, or again, we're into things that top leadership can do now. A CEO newsletter or video newsletter, which is like something like unfiltered communication from the CEO. Not something that has to go through legal and the communications department, but like every other week, the CEO maybe sends out a newsletter or does a video like, here's what's going on right now. Here's what I'm proud of. Here are some of the challenges we're facing. Here's what I'm focused on. Just so people have a point of contact and can maintain a positive parasocial relationship with upper management. I've seen this in a Danish grocery chain where the CEO did this, and this was very unfiltered. Like they didn't even spell check it. It was like he just wrote it and sent it out every other week. And just like, here's what I'm passionate about. Here's what I'm working on. Here's what I care about this week. Tip number 9: use conflicts to strengthen relationships. This is very important. There's in any organization, there's going to be conflict. Two people are going to misunderstand each other. Two people are going to, disagree on something. And if we don't handle conflict early, it's going to escalate and get worse. And I think a fantastic example of this is from Jody Hoffer-Gattel's book on Southwest Airlines, where managers are trained to spot and resolve conflict. So if they see two employees from different teams having a conflict over whatever, they've been trained in having what's called a come to Jesus meeting, where these two people who are having a conflict will sit down and figure out, so what went wrong? Not whose fault is it, but like, where do we go from here? And what they say is that reliably, people come out of this meeting with a stronger, more positive and better relationship than they had before, because they're like, oh my God, it was all a misunderstanding, and now they know better next time. I think, and some managers can be a little conflict averse. Like if these two employees are having a conflict, let's just let them fix it. But that's not always going to work. So I think it's super important that managers are trained to spot and resolve conflicts. And finally, tip number 10: celebrate the people who build relationships. So if you have somebody in your workplace, somebody in your team who's just nice, kind, positive, always there for others, somebody who just creates that good mood and builds relationship in the team, those people deserve to be celebrated and praised just as much as the people who, get stellar results. I worked with Novo, with a team from Novo, where we actually created an award show for, best coworker, and let people nominate each other and vote on the winners. And it was amazing. And some of the stories that came out of, you're just always friendly. It's always a joy to work with you. Every time I come to work and see you're there, it makes me happy. Or you're just always so helpful. Some of those things really come out. And those are the things that, these people exist in every workplace, but very often they're anonymous. They're not celebrated. And I think we need to do that. So if you can find a way in your team to celebrate those, relationship builders, find them and share the good stories about them, that can be super powerful. I have one more point I want to make. But before that, what about when we work from home? All right. More and more people are working from home. More and more people are in distributed teams. And I will say that is a challenge. It is just easier to create good relationships when we're in the same room at the same time. Absolutely. No doubt about it. But you absolutely can do it. And every single one of the 10 tips I've just mentioned will work in person or remotely. You can create positive feedback. You can do random acts of kindness remotely. You can have those shared groups for shared passions. You can have those remotely. Every single one of those tips will work just as well remotely. You just have to find ways to make them work, right? Breaks, you could say, even if you're working from home, we're going to have a lunch break from 12:15 to 12:45, and let's be on Skype and chat about what we've been doing this week, and reconnect as coworkers, or whatever works for your organization. But you will have to work a little harder if people are not in the same building at the same time. No doubt about it. Cool. So going back to results and relationships, I will say this: results and relationships are what everybody needs to be happy at work. But some people are definitely more results oriented. Like, what really makes them tick is being good at their jobs, picking up new skills, making a difference, achieving their goals, and other people are more relationship oriented. I personally am definitely more results oriented, no doubt about it. But I will say this: everybody needs good relationships in order to be happy, both at work and in life, by the way. And the research is very, very clear on this, that at the heart, human beings are relational creatures. Nothing matters more to us than being liked and respected for who we are. And when we have that, we're happy. And if we're with a group of people who don't respect us, who don't like us, who maybe treat us badly, then we're miserable. And this is basic human nature. And my favorite study in this is, I've shown this before, I'll show it again, is this, where you see a young toddler in a room, and a person who needs help, and you watch what these children do. There's devastatingly cute videos of this on YouTube, and without fail, every single time, without any prompting, without being asked, with no reward promised, people will, toddlers will just help each other, will help other people. They will share food with others, and I think that's amazing. So this just shows that at our core, we are relational human beings. We are happy when those around us are happy. And if we can do things to make other people happy, that just makes us happy. So never ever underestimate relationships at work. Cool. I will now check and see if there are any questions that came in while I was talking. So hang on. Yes, there is one here. Oh, that's a good one. Somebody wrote, I agree that organizations consistently undervalue relationships. Why do you think that is? Yes, there, and not only do some, like I said, not only do companies undervalue relationships, in many cases there's an anti-relational bias, right? I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to do my job. I'm here to get ahead. I think it's become so there's been this perception that work is about results. So who gets promoted? Only the results oriented managers, right? And then who do they promote? Once they've risen in they promote more results oriented people. Who do they hire? Results oriented people. So in many workplaces, if there is somebody there who is more relationship oriented, it's almost by accident, and certainly not by design. So it can definitely accelerate in an organization, so that more results focus drives more results focus, right? And it shouldn't. It should be the opposite, that more results focus drives more relational focus, because that's what we need. And I honestly believe that relationships create results more than results create relationships. So it's been the perception in many places. It still is the perception that work is all about results. And I'm not here to make friends. You can have friends in your spare time. But I do see that changing, and I do see more and more of a focus on creating good relationships in the workplace. And as I said, that has so many advantages. All righty, let me wrap up here. If you want more information, there's our YouTube channel. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. There's our website and our blog at Positive Sharing. And of course, you can sign up for our newsletter. Please do that. And most of all, if you really want to be happy at work, you can book me to come speak in your organization. In all modesty, I am pretty awesome at it. Thank you so much for watching, and stay happy.